card. Not really. I want you to look at the back of that, how to water. So we'll cover how to water. And then I was teaching a class, had some leftover handouts on butterfly plants. It went over so big, I thought, I'm just going to take these extras and give them to you. If you were here early and there's enough of them, you get one. If you're here late and I run out, you don't get one. So you have to go to our website to get that. That's kind of what... All right, so hey, welcome to you all online, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever else we're broadcasting this. It is live here at Waters Garden Center. Welcome to the class, our VIP students, virtual in person. We love you all even more, but we're glad that you're here. Today's garden class is on gardening for newcomers. And I wish I could just download what I have in my brain and just give it to you. But there's too much data. You don't learn gardening that way. What I want to do, the goal today is at least get you where you're making mistakes and you're going in the right direction. So it's going to be kind of a lot of handouts, a lot of technical stuff, a lot of note taking. So kind of, and we'll save some, this is a big class, so we'll kind of save some questions towards the end. I'll make sure I leave 10 minutes or so, just so we can field some questions, okay? So we're going to go over fertilizing, how to water, plant seasons, the cycles, all that kind of stuff. And each one of these I could dedicate an entire hour to. We're going to go 30,000 foot and just quickly guide over, and then we can go deeper later, okay? So that's kind of the goal. My name is Ken Lane. I own the Garden Center. And so how does Ken Lane come to own Waters Garden Center? Well, Harold Waters started the Garden Center back in 1962. This is our 61st anniversary. Welcome. And so he had 4 pretty daughters. And I took a liking to the youngest, prettiest one. So I think. So that was like 35 years ago. So that's kind of, I was in corporate America. I was a banker. I was actually selling credit reports. I hated that job. Actually, I liked it. Marketing director for Equifax. And so I kind of went, I just don't like this corporate, big, gigantic. I miss my little town, always going home. I miss cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents. I want to go home. So this is where I grew up. This is where my wife is from. And so one winter, this is more than I wanted to share, but here it is. One winter, Harold and I were chopping a cord of wood over the holidays, just what men do. I could chop this one in. And so we negotiated this deal of coming back home, taking over the business over a cord of wood of all things. So that's kind of family business. So my wife and I have owned it for 20 years. And then we've raised 4 kids of our own. And one of the 4 decided she kind of likes this kind of work and she's training to take it over for the next 20 years. That's kind of us. That's who we are. Our main competition is box stores, big orange and blue box stores specifically. Walmart's too. Anyway, there's bigger ones. So those are our niche. Our niche is quality, unique, different variety, a little bit bigger plant. And mainly our plants, when you plant them, they thrive. They're just going to live. And there's some pressure with that. So that's why we teach. We have so many garden classes. We have radio shows and garden columns. There's a reason for that because our plants need to live. And so when you check out, You're given handouts on how to plant, so it's detail. And with that detail comes success. One thing I can tell you is if you're from the Midwest, this is going to be really, really hard for you all, okay? You know who you are, Minnesota, Ohio, Indiana, that whole 8 foot of topsoil. You don't have that here. You've got millimeters. Some of you have none. And those of you that do have some soil, the contractor took the backhoe and just scraped it all off to make room for your footers, your driveways. And some of you are you're literally gardening in dead soil. There's not one living thing in there. You won't find a worm, any mycorrhizal colonies, there's nothing. You're just clay. This is the only place you'll find the word caliche. It's also the only place you ever hear the word javelina. You haven't heard those until you moved here. So welcome to the Southwest. Here we are. It is God's country. It's beautiful. When you have successes, it is like a delight. It's like an oasis. Because we've got these rock lawns that are so sterile, when something shines, it's like, wow, I can't believe that. Your neighbors are talking about it. You are such a gardener. How did you do that? Whereas in the East Coast, South, it's just one more green plant that blooms. It's not as special. Here it's got some specialness to it. And so I live up in the Eagle Ridge area, up above Prescott Lakes, looking at the dells. It's the hardest gardening I have ever done. I have farmed all over the county. I've had homes all over the county. That's the hardest. It's north slope. It overlooks the dells looking this way. So in the winter, it's cold and the snow sticks around. You folks up that White Spar area, you see the same thing. The north side of the ranch, those areas, those north hills are cold and it's heavy, heavy, heavy clay. I've killed more things. That's why I don't want that for you. I want success, not struggle. So I can't seem to keep a manzanita alive because it's too heavy clay, wet. It just doesn't drain fast enough. And so for me, it's a classic house, dug into the side of the hill. The house is protruding outside the hill. You walk straight in the front door, and then it's like 2 stories down to the backyard. It's that. I had to actually put tiers in and bring in some raised bed. I have over 50 containers just because the clay is so hard. Some of you up on these ridge lines, you've got these beautiful vistas. I mean, stunning vistas. But the wind, and you have all your soil goes whoosh over there. So you're left with these beautiful rock piles. Some of you, plants don't grow in rocks. They don't grow in rocks. There's nothing you can do to make them grow into a rock. What you can do is create little pockets, little raised planters, and you plant inside those. And so you have these plants that kind of spill out. And I'll go over some of the plants at the end as far as which ones crawl through all those rocks, which ones take the sun. What about the shade? I got to cover you folks from California. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. I know it's half of you. Not all of you. Californians take all the blame, but it's all of us. We're from everywhere. And so how many Alaskans do we have? Alaska's always? No Alaskans. Hawaii. Usually we have 1 or 2 Alaskans or Hawaiis here. So at sea level, elevation is a serious thing. You feel it when you come up here. You go, oh, sea level. You come up here, you're going, I run out of breath a little bit longer, a little bit sooner. But the great thing is once you adjust, when you go down to sea level, you can run all day long on the beach. It's like you just go and go and go, and your friends are going, wow, you're like Superman. Your plants do the same exact thing. When they come up to elevation, they tire out sooner. It's mainly because there's not as much atmosphere, so the sun is more intense. That, and it is drier here. And so the humidity, you can feel that in your skin. You use more lotion, more sunblocks. You use more of that here. Well, so do your plants. I'll give you some techniques on what to do with that. So that elevation, don't underestimate that. The sun is more intense. And I mentioned the Californians because you're coming from that lower elevation. I brought this plant. This is the #1 asked for plant by Californians. Only California, Midwest, kind of, yeah, okay, I've grown that up fine. Give me something else. California wants this plant. This is a Japanese maple. Grows right out there in full sun in California. You read the tag, it says grows right out there in full sun. Yeah, they're writing it for California. So, but here, this plant does not like our sun, does not like our wind. It's dry, crusty, hot wind. Doesn't like that. It will grow fantastic here in a more shaded area. Get this plant out of that 10 to 2 heat of the day, and it will be beautiful. It'll be the loveliest plant ever. It's a nice little short plant. You know, Japanese maple get up that mid-teens. It's beautiful, fanned umbrella. It's a beautiful plant. The green ones, the purple ones. I just brought one. Just it was from down. I got 3 or 4 varieties down there. We have the largest selection of Japanese maples for our Californians, but we want to make sure you plant it in the right place, or otherwise it'll be the world's ugliest plant. It won't die, but it won't thrive. It'll get black tips. The leaves will kind of burn back. It'll just struggle and struggle. So for me, I've got 3 Japanese maples at my house. I like Japanese maples, but every one of them are in a container. On the north side, we have big patios. The north side of our house is a 2.5-story house. It is the most beautiful area to lounge around in this time of year because it's all shaded. It's cool. It's huge patios, hot tubs, fire pits, grills. You just want to entertain back there, sip a glass of wine, and watch the butterflies go by, and we do. But there's so much block that I wanted some soft. You need some softscape, some living stuff to kind of make it feel welcoming. Japanese maple do that against that huge structure that's right there. So it gives me some height. So the maples are this big. They're in the shade. They've been there for years, and they do great. So just kind of watch. Don't plant this right out in the yard in that island where the driveway goes around, exposed everything. You won't be happy. So just kind of, there are better choices. So another one is called flame maple. It looks like this, just kind of a counter to that. Flame maple or amur maple, A-M-U-R, amur maple. It looks like this. It comes in green, but it's a small leafed maple. Loves the sun, loves wind, loves alkaline soil, loves everything about here. Doesn't burn back. It doesn't come in purple, only comes in green, but they call it flame maple because of the flaming red of the fall color. That would be a better choice if you're in full sun. There's so many other, we'll go over a lot of choices. Just trying to help you. I know I'm dealing with people from all over the US, pretty much all over the globe. Many of you have traveled extensively. So I'm trying to help you hone it in here. Let's cover frost dates. So we're in the middle of the growing season, but you need to know when to start, when to end, or when to shift gears. Okay, I'll go over the 5 main planting seasons, but really the frost dates. So May 8 for you folks in Prescott, May 8 is your last frost. This is 100 years of data. May 8 is the last frost date. Now you folks in Prescott Valley, you're different, totally different. I think you're at May 7 or something like that. Okay, just you all think you're all so special. Chino Valley, I think, is the same as Prescott Valley. You just kind of say Pollen's the most extreme because you've got all that cold air spilling off of Ash Fork. It's like the hottest of the hot and the coldest of the cold because that elevation just kind of changes the temperature for you. And so we're pretty much May 8th. So the locals use Mother's Day as a holiday, just as Mother's Day never falls on the 8th, but it's a holiday to kind of remember, oh yeah, when is the last frost? Now, the funny thing about 100 years averages, 50 of those years, it was the end of April was the last frost. The other 50 years is in the middle of May. I've literally seen it snow on Mother's Day. So it's an average. You can plant before that, just be ready to protect plants. Or plant plants that like the frost. You're going to have plants, there's a whole season there. I'll go over that in a second. The other one is, Christy, do you need me? What are you doing? You're killing me here. Okay, we don't need, I don't want to talk about it because then other people will want it. So, okay, there you go. Gotcha. Here we go. I like it when plants are sold before we even get to talk about them. It's kind of how it works sometimes. Well, obviously. The first frost of the year is October 29. Locals use Halloween as the holiday. So about Halloween, you can tell it's getting frosty. There's a chill in the air in the evening. It's really nice during the day, but you can get some chill to things. So just be aware. You want to protect, and that's when you have like 50 green tomatoes sitting there waiting to be picked. They aren't quite red yet. We'll cover them because it's going to get nice again. Because the way we don't go slowly, from winter to the growing season. We violently do it. So it's like really nice, and then it's crazy cold, and there's a snowstorm, then it gets really nice, and we go out of it the same way. So it can be really nice until the first part of December. It can be beautiful if you just protect things a little bit, okay? Okay, so those are the frost dates. Now we have 5 main planting seasons. Actually, we might have more. Let me think about that. Actually, 6. Okay, here they are. Early spring. That's a definite planting season. It starts about March, into February, March. Sometime after Valentine's, the weather turns nice. The days when it's nice are really nice, but we are going to see more frost and snow. But it's nice. That's when you put your pansies, kale, the early things that like bright days and cold nights. Spring is coming. That's Mother's Day. That's when you plant your tropical plants. These things don't like any amount of frost. If you look at a tomato plant with cold thoughts, it will suffer. They do not like the cold. They're tropical. They're from Mexico. They like warm. And so you need to wait until May. I wait until June to plant mine. Don't feel like you're in a hurry. So you just plant it starting May through June is really your spring official season. I define June by itself. June is perennial month. Perennials are those plants that come back year after year. So they're perennial and permanent. Both start with P. So you just plant once and done. They keep coming back. I'll have a lot of perennials in spring, and I'll cover some of them here. But they're usually they're green blobs in a bucket. They're not very inspiring. You're trying to look at the little tiny tag they put in there and go, what color is that? You can't smell them. You can't touch them. In June, that all changes. They've now elongated, and now we've got the whole lower greenhouse is nothing but perennials. They're all in bloom, and it's easy to figure out which ones you want. June is the time to plant perennials, or at least the broadest selection of perennials. Summer, that's what we're in right now. It's July and August, pretty much. This is when the crepe myrtles, the roses Sharons, roses come back into bloom again. There's butterfly bush, all the heat lovers. They love this time of year. Now, heat lovers, they have zero interest in spring. I get phone calls. You can almost predict it. If I had a nickel for every time, I'd go to Vegas on that one. You're going to get calls. People are going to go, my grapes, I think they died. They're just they're not leafing out. Everything else in the yard is leafing out. I treat them all the same. Yeah, but it's not the same plant. Grapes have no interest in spring. They like summer. They want it to be warm. They're like lizards. Some of you love heat. You like crawling up on a rock or on a beach going, I just want to soak up the rays. Of course, you're married to the person that only likes winter, and they roast. Anytime it's above like 78 degrees, they're hot. So the plants are like people. Some love the heat, some like the cold. So your spring things are going to be lilacs, forsythia. Roses start to bloom. They'll be in bloom by first part of May, end of April. They love that type of year. Right now, it's crepe myrtles and butterfly bush. All the stuff you see out there right now, summer plants, okay? We're about to discount all the leftover lilacs because they're just green things in a bucket. They're not inspiring. They will be next spring, but I have another 300 of them growing right now. I don't need these left over. I've got more coming. So you try to rotate your crops so that they're inspiring by the season. So you got early spring, June is perennial month, summer, fall, September, October. Your aspens are going into color. The mums are blooming. Pumpkins. It's almost like a decoration time. You're putting corn stalks up. You're just having fun. It's a change. You can keep going. So your first frost comes the end of October. So you could keep growing pretty good, but you're going to start seeing fall color show up. Then you got winter. 20% of your entire landscape should be dedicated to evergreens. or you will be left barren in the winter. So 20% of those anchors, those are spruce trees and junipers and cypress, cedars, all those evergreen red-tip botinias, elaeagnus, all those evergreen things. Cotoneasters, a lot of native cotoneasters that grow here. They're evergreen. Those are things you want to have out there. Okay, so those are how many was that? Early spring, June, summer, fall. 6. There's 6 seasons truly. And you'll see the crop rotations change at the garden center based on those seasons because we grow for those seasons. So we're dealing with 2.5 acres here, and we don't have room for all the plants, all the selection. We don't want to water that many plants. So we bring in the ones that look really good for that season. So if you're just shopping here in the spring, you're going to have a spring mix that just blooms, and then it'll be just kind of green plants. And you'll be looking at your neighbors going, I want a butterfly bush. And so you'll have to add some of those in. There was something else I wanted to mention. What was it? Do you remember? It'll come to me. So every week I do a radio show. How many have heard the Mountain Gardener radio show or podcast? Oh, third. That's pretty. Oh, half. Good. That's good. So tune in. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend. So you go for an hour straight, and pretty much it's whatever I've been doing in my own yards. That's what's shared. So, or if I get customers coming in all the time going, what is this thing? What is this in bloom? I'll just share going, here, you've been wondering, this is a Robinia, purple robe locust, great big purple flowers. I'll just share that out there. God, Ken is so smart. I'm just regurgitating what you all have been asking all week long and just sharing that. So again, trying to get your neighbors are very informative. That's gardening. We're social. We share it. When you see a success, you try to help others do the same. Okay, so seasons. Oh, let's talk about this. It is not easy to grow things here. Because of our sun, I mentioned that. The wind, mentioned that. Humidity, so it's dry. That dry prevailing wind in spring is hard on plants. They're just leafing out. And you get this dry wind that blows nonstop all day and night. It's hard on that new growth. Right now, things are in bloom or they're in fruit. So I'm having quite a few customers coming in with, my fruits are dropping. I'm hearing this like every day. Like my peaches are dropping, the fruits are dropping. Well, that's June drop. It's 3 weeks late this year, so usually we call it June drop. There's so many fruits that the roots can literally not take up moisture fast enough to support that many fruits. And so the tree is balancing its portfolio, fruits, and it's dropping the weaker ones and going, I'm just going to keep the core alive, and I'll drop the other ones. So some of you, if you're into apples and pears, those just load up. Plums, they load up so heavy. It's ridiculous this year how many fruits are on things. You might need to take off some of those. So you have a cluster of 5 apples. You really only want 1 or 2 on the end of that. So take the 3 weakest ones out of there so that the remaining energy can support those extra fruits that are left over. That's just something you'll find here pretty. Otherwise, you're left with apricots at, this big, smaller than a golf ball. All you get is you grew pits, no real fruit. And so if you thin some of them, that happens. So you're seeing that quite a bit right now. As plants are flowering or fruiting, it's critical to get the watering right. If the plant goes dry, it will sacrifice the flowers or the fruit to keep the core of the plant alive. So with that, I want to cover watering. Here, let's just cover that real quick. So pull out that card. So I gave you my card. Here's my secret desire, my innermost desire. Have my logo in every irrigation box in Yavapai County. Secret, that's what I want. So this is meant to tape inside your garden journal, tape inside your irrigation box so you can remember, when did he say to turn that thing off? Well, it's going to be in November probably because our first frost is coming and you don't want that irrigation system to freeze. So, and the key piece of that is that some of you have older backflow preventers. There's this great big piece of plumbing that comes out about this tall. And they put a bag over it. It's the ugliest thing ever in the yard. It's like whole neighborhoods have this big bag sitting out there. I don't know why why the code requires them to do that, but they do. So you don't want that piece to freeze. If it does, it's like a $500 part. It's expensive. And then you don't want your manifold where all the valves are. Usually it's underground. You'll see a green lid someplace underground, and there'll be 3 to 4 to 5 or 6 or 8 valves underneath that. You don't want those to freeze. So usually we're powering down the system, or we're insulating those to ensure that they're not going to freeze. That's when you're going to really check the well house. If you're on a well, you want to really insulate that thing. So really make sure that, turn on the heat tape and the heat lamps, making sure that pump doesn't freeze, because if it does, that's a $2,000 part. So usually that happens in the month of November. We're powering up the irrigation. You're seeing it says growing season April through October, because pretty much that's when things are growing. So you're going to activate or turn on the irrigation, or really up the irrigation cycles starting the end of March, first part of April, because that's when your lilacs are in bloom then. Your forsythia are almost bloomed out by then. Your fruit trees are starting to set fruit. Right then, everything is in bloom at that point. So you want to start watering. Again, it's critical when things are blooming or fruiting, you want to get the irrigation right. And so for established plants, that's the first line. Most of us have established. It's been planted for over 2 years. So the roots have gone from, what's a good example? Hey, Ken, could you bring me my chair? That'd be careful. Forgot to bring that over. Yeah, perfect. So this is an Elaeagnus. This is a native plant. This will, once adjusted, it will grow by itself, never needs water or care from you again. You can curse at this. Thank you. Appreciate that. You can curse at this, take a blow dryer to it. It's just going to grow and grow. It's super tough. This is the one I grow in my own yard. I would not grow a red tip Botania. That's the one where the new growth is red, only because, I put my kids through college just selling that one plant. It's the #1 seller, but it's also got mildew like crazy right now. Deer are eating on it. It's a very high maintenance plant. I don't want high maintenance. I want easy care. This is the easy care. It gets up the same height, gets up this big, this wide, evergreen, blocks everything, but it's got a real leathery leaf to it. I also like this because it's gold. Now the native one has this blue center. It's all blue. We figured out how to variegate it or add some color to it. So now it's a bright color. This goes really well if you've got these dark rock is all the rage right now. We like dark mocha colored rocks. And so we put this down, it just pops. It gives you that contrast to it. So this is Elaeagnus, or silverberry is the actual common name, silverberry. And you can take a photo of the tag afterwards. So this is a native plant. It's going to adapt by itself. But right now it's dedicated to you because the roots are only right here. It takes a couple seasons for the roots to be out further where it's established, can go by itself. So the first couple of years to growing 2 springs, you're really watering this thing a couple times a week. New plants a couple times a week. Once it's established, once a week. Should be enough. Now the question comes in, well, how much water does it take to do that? This is where the biggest mistake comes, okay? Especially with micro irrigation or drip irrigation, these really efficient drip irrigation systems, which is what we're watering. They pay for themselves pretty quick if you're using that, but they're difficult to use, to learn how to use. The main emitter they put on the base of this tree, you're going to put an emitter right here. So you got your main distribution line. You got spaghetti tubing, is what they call it. It runs through the plant. You put an emitter on the end of that. The typical emitter is 1 gallon per hour. That's the standard. If you're really generous, you've got a 2 gallon per hour emitter on there. We even go down to ½ gallon. So there's some range, but it's got to run for 1 hour to get 1 gallon of water. This is a 5 gallon plant. It needs about 5 gallons of water per week to keep it happy. This is a 15 gallon plant. This needs about 15 gallons of water a week to keep it happy. A 10 gallon plant needs about 10 gallons. Yeah, you got it. 1 gallon needs 1 gallon. So the bigger the root, the more it's going to take, the more. So a big plant, you might need 2 emitters. to get the coverage better. So as it drips, it forms this teardrop shape in the soil, like a big teardrop, which is great for health of plants because it's watering the base of that plant more than it appears where that thing is dripping. It looks like it's still dry up here, but down here it's really hydrated that entire root ball. That's ideal. I find that people run the system too frequently and not long enough. The standard landscape diatribe, which is if you can't get a job someplace, but you own a pickup truck and a shovel, you're now a landscaper. They're not the sharpest tool. Just kind of want to put my industry down, but just be aware. They're saying water every day for 20 minutes, twice a day. So 20 minutes, let's see, 1 gallon per hour. Let's do the math real quick. So you're giving the plant a quart of water in the morning and a quart of water, a half gallon per day. You're going to water this plant. You're going to have the water's only going to penetrate just a few inches. It's not going to water the entire root ball. That's a foot, 14 inches deep. It's not going to water the whole thing, just right here. It will keep the plant alive, but you're going to have very shallow rooted plants. And you don't want shallow plants. Kind of like you don't like shallow people. You don't want shallow plants. You don't want them in the yard. You want them in your neighbor's yard, not your yard. You want deep, rich, experienced plants. It's going to take the system. You got to run it longer. Again, these are super efficient. It seems like you're wasting water, but you're not. You're regulating the water flow by that emitter. So you got to water it at least an hour. If you only have one emitter on this, you might need to water it 2-3 hours to get enough water to make this thing happy. You might need to do it twice in the week just to get enough on there. But when you do that, you've got to back off and let that plant dry out in between those irrigation cycles. So run the system a long time and then wait a few days, let it dry out, and then water it again. So if you're seeing here, it says drip irrigation should run 2 to 3 hours at a time, about once a week. Okay, it was crazy hot last week. Okay, and I looked at my water bill. I was so proud of myself. Man, I am saving water. Oh my God, and my plants look pretty good. Oh, I'm the guy. I'm the gardener. I'm gardening without water. And then I started really looking at my plants. They stopped blooming. Tomatoes were not. They were. You could tell they were heat stress. So I bumped it up to 5 days. Only for the heat of the day, and then I'm praying for rain. Then I'm going to back it right back off to 7, maybe 8 days. The same amount, I never play with how long it runs. Once you figure out how long you need to run that system to make plants happy, to water the entire root zone plus a little bit more, never play with that variable again. Only play with how many days do I go in between water cycles. That just simplifies how to adjust how often to water. I got to go. He's just begging back here. I'll be right back. Yeah.
So let's say that you've been accustomed to watering plants 7 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you changed it to an hour and a half. So are they going to freak out and say, "Hey, I'm not used to going in"?
So let me just, for folks on camera, just over here. So he's been watering, let's say for an hour, and now we want to try to go a little bit deeper. But the plants, do we need to adjust? Do we need to train the plants to go with that deeper but longer cycle? Yes. Yeah. So plants are just like puppy dogs. You're going to have to train them to thrive in the yard. So if you've adjusted your plants to be this rooted and you want them to be more drought hardy, so they're deeper rooted by giving them more water, it's going to take a season for them to get those roots down, but they will follow that water. So the biggest mistake, and you'll see this in your own neighborhood, watch this. We're famous for planting an apple tree, a plum, a peach, a pear, a fruit tree, and then it starts to load up. We didn't stake it, so now it's leaning to the northeast. Okay, so there's this prevailing southwest wind. It's like big parachutes. They start growing, they start leaning. Look at them, they're all leaning to the northeast. So, and now it's loaded up with fruit, and we've been watering it incorrectly. And so all of a sudden this plant You'll find plants in your neighborhood that will fall out of the ground. They literally just fall over. The roots were never deep enough to keep that much weight up on a fruit tree that's that loaded. So we should have trained that tree, watered it less often, but deeper, so the roots would go chasing the water to get a deeper root. So you have to train plants to do that. That's why the first year you're watering it twice a week instead of once a week. Because their roots, they just are not deep enough. They don't have the depth and they don't have the width yet. But they will in pretty short order. Just train them. Okay, over here, something, yeah.
Are there differences though between like bushes and flowers?
Good question. Yeah, good question. So are there differences between trees, shrubs, vines, roses? Pretty much it's deep-rooted things and shallow-rooted things. So rose is very deep-rooted. That's why they're so robust. Trees are all of them. Vines are deep-rooted. And so all those things are going to be established plants once a week. Shallow-rooted things, flowers, vegetables, I mean, their roots only go. Carrots are pretty deep-rooted, but they only go this deep. They need more often. So that's where you're doing with the flowers, veggies, and herbs. Those need more frequent. So for me, my container gardens, I did just in the heat. I was going it every 3 days. It was every 3 days until about a week ago, when that heat cycle it went from nice to, oh my gosh, it's summer. Then I'm at every day right now. As soon as the rains come, I'll adjust it back and see if I can't go to every other day or so. So I'm playing with that clock pretty often. I'm adjusting it. And so don't be afraid to touch the clock. Learn how to use it. Because it'll be your friend. It'll help you with healthier plants. Did I cover that? Okay? Good. Okay. Enough on watering, because I got an entire class on nothing but that. I have another class on nothing but drip irrigation. Check online our YouTube channel. The classes are there. Just type in the search bar. It's been over 1 million downloads already. Just look for that and watch the class. It'll help you. Okay. Right now, I am fertilizing. So what you'll find, this is so hard for you Midwest folks. You never fertilize. Or if you did use some cheesy thing like Miracle Grow and you said that was the magic that made everything go, it wasn't. It was your soil. You've got such great soil that I could throw this hat on the ground, it would start to grow. That's easy. So here you can't do that. You need to be more of a gardener. You need to be more, there's less fudge factor. You need to be more honed in. There's some mistake factor. That's what I'm trying to impart today is how can I help you have some mistakes, but at least you're not going to, you can recover from it, okay? One thing that you will find, it is pronounced, we have no food in our soil. There's just nothing. Your plants are more dependent on you than anywhere else in the country. So you need to fertilize more regularly. And this is where you do a Google search and you will be dumbfounded. You become more of an idiot when you read the internet. It's like, what am I even doing here? What's right? Let me just help you. This is super easy. So I used to sell, I don't know how many, I had a geranium food, a pansy food, a fruit tree food, 2 lawn foods, an evergreen food. It was ridiculous. Food is just a game the industry wants you to buy more of. Here's the insider scoop. You just need a good food and use it consistently. I don't care which one. Actually, I do. I'm going to show you which one I recommend because I make it. But you just need consistent food. You don't need all these specialty things. They just want to fill up your garage with all this fertilizer. Just pick a good one and stick with it. I personally think because we are all drinking groundwater, we're all just a straw in the ground, pumping it up, storing it in tanks. Even you city folks, you're still drinking well water. You county folks, you Chino Valley, you're all on wells. So you know what that straw in the ground. You should not be using chemical fertilizers around your well. You can poison yourself. So that can get into your water source. If you're using Scott's Turf Builder, all these, the petroleum-based chemical fertilizers, traditional, that's where the carbon comes from for plant growth. Don't be using that around your well. It's just not healthy. It's not healthy for the plants. Here's really what's going on. The plant loves chemical fertilizer. They love it. They will green up and go, whoa, I am a gardener. The problem is chemical fertilizers kill everything that's in the soil. Your worm, it vaporizes worms, all the beneficial mycorrhizal stuff, it vaporizes those. So for the long-term health, it's detrimental for your plants. Short-term, you'll see a pop of growth. You go, no, that worked. Long-term, it's not going to be as good for you. What should you do? Well, let me tell you. So we make 2 fertilizers here at the Garden Center. I think we should be using organic or natural fertilizers. Organics are typically lower in number. So 20, 20, 20. That's the standard one asked for. 16, 16, 16. You'll see some magazines talk about that. These are chemicals that they're balancing out. They have to be very high in number because most of the chemicals flush away. Very little of it actually gets picked up by the roots of the plants. An organic fertilizer, you can go with lower numbers because all of it sticks around the soil and the plant picks up most of it. The first rainstorm, your Miracle-Gro or your Scott's, whatever, it gets picked up and it liquefies and it goes down. Most of it goes down to your neighbors or downstream. It just goes downstream. It just doesn't stay around very long. Literally 2-3 weeks, it's gone. An organic fertilizer, this will stick around 3 months. What you need is a slow release, long release food that's granular, so it breaks down every time your irrigation, the rains come, it breaks down a little bit of food around that root ball. And then the other big mistake I find people make with granulars is they'll tend to focus. I have a tree. So I'll take this. This is a twisty baby locust. So locust is really great here. Anytime you hear the word locust, you got yourself a winner. There's some native varieties. This is a cousin of the native New Mexico locust that grows here. But it's unusual because it's got this corkscrew, kind of artistic. I know I was dealing with some hardcore gardeners. Face it, you're new to town, and you're at a garden class for newcomers, just so you can up your game this season. That says something about you right there. I can't just bring any I got to bring something special. This is a special, unusual, different locust. Super drought hardy. When I'm fertilizing this, the mistake I find people make is they're focused on the trunk and not out where the drip line is. So let's say I'm the trunk and my branches are out here. All the feeder roots, they're halfway out around the branches. That's where all the finer, like they're real fine white roots right out there. They're the ones that pick up the water and the food. At the base of the plant is nothing but anchoring big barky, stocky roots. They really cannot take in moisture. They can't take in food. So don't waste your food at the base. Put it out with a drip line. Put it out here. It'll be a real game changer. So don't worry about your drip emitters. You're not fertilizing for your emitter, your irrigation system. You're fertilizing for nature's rain. Eventually, we get moisture every month of the year here. You're fertilizing for that, and that's what's going to take it through the rock, through the fabrics, down to the roots. Just get it on there, and the rains will take care of the rest. Okay, don't worry about your water basin. You built this basin around it. You want all the food there. Fertilize with the drip. Focus on the drip line. It'll make the plants healthier. Bush is the same way. Drip line, drip line, drip line, not the base. A big lilac or big, if you ever almost killed two of my kids by pulling out a rose tree once. I couldn't get it out, Doggone it. I got a bumper and I got a rope. I tied it up to the Escalade and I tied the rope up there, and I didn't realize rope stretches. I should have used a chain. Rope stretches, it created a catapult. My kids were there helping me. Good kids. They know how to work hard. Problem is they were right in the line of sight, and this thing leaped out. The root finally gave way. The root was like this deep. Finally gave way, and this thing went catapulting like 30, 40 feet across the front yard, across the driveway, just past the two kids, and then over to the other side. They're identical twins. If you're going to take out twins, don't take just one. You got to take both or none. There's two choices. So anyway, just going forward and go, whoa. That's one you never want the mothers to see. You never tell them what really happened. So you kind of, they live. We had a great day. It's a good day. We got the roses out. Deep rooted. So, but the finer root hairs are out here. That's where you want to focus, okay? I think you should fertilize even your natives. Your native trees, so some of you are like, I've got this magnificent alligator bark juniper. When I moved in, it was this huge big ball. It was a mess. It overgrew the whole yard. I've pruned it up. I've got some underplantings, got some art. I've uplit it, I've downlit it. It's like a showpiece. I want to make sure I keep that thing healthy. Some of you, the tractors, just compressing the root balls, having a dump truck or a cement truck drive over that root, that is detrimental to native plants. Then you took its natural flow that it's been used to its entire life, 300, 400, 500 years, and now all of a sudden you're changing the water flow with streets and driveways and drainage. The plant, your neighborhood, your native trees, they are stressed out. A little bit of care goes a long ways. I would fertilize them once a year. This is ponderosas. Whatever it is, native ash trees, just fertilize them once a year. Usually I recommend in the spring. Actually, I don't know that it matters. Just get it on there. Fertilize, and once a year, don't overdo it. A little bit goes along with natives. And I would water them. Very limited. But right now, April, May, June, or whenever the monsoons come, if you could take a soaker hose or something out there, once a month is enough. Just top off. It's a dry period. April, May, June is typically very dry. So just top them off. Get them used to, get them over till the rains come. And then you probably never have to care for them again for the rest of the year. That's enough to get to mitigate bark beetle, tip borer, ips beetle, flathead borer, all these things that eat native trees. That's usually enough. And when I've seen entire neighborhoods obliterated by pinyon pine scale, the ones that were cared for, that had gardeners taking care of their landscapes, those are the trees that lived. All the other ones, I mean, almost every tree to the neighborhood died. You could tell which ones are cared for and which ones aren't. And it doesn't take very much, okay? With that being said, don't overdo it, or you can kill them with kindness too. You all are gardeners. We are very generous people. And so don't give them too much. A little bit is good. So my pinyon pines that are out there on their own, I'm taking the hose, and I just had this little sprinkler thing, cheesy, like $4.99 thing I put on my hose, throw it out there. I don't run for an hour. Just I'm taking the edge off until the rains come. That's all I'm doing, okay? Right now, I do have a couple stressed out things. I just fertilize everything in the yard with this all-purpose plant food. It's a 744. You'll hear about it all. This is #1 seller by far. The two main ingredients are cottonseed meal, which brings out color and fragrance, and bird guano. You just want green like now. Bird poop is the best. And so it's granulated, so it's easy to spread. We also added iron and sulfur. There's a reason for that. So here, this is kind of this little bubble to the southwest, is very alkaline. It's very unusual. The rest of the country is very acidic. So they're always trying to raise their pH. So they're telling you, go out and put your wood ash out around the yard. Don't ever do that here unless you want everything dead, because wood ash is extremely high in alkalinity. So it raises the pH so high that nothing can grow. So they'll say add lime. Lime sweetens the soil. If you read any garden blog, lime in the spring sweetens the soil. Don't ever do that here, or you will kill your plants. Lime raises the pH, because they're talking to folks from Washington, D.C. up to Boston, over to Chicago, to Washington State. They call it the Great Garden Arc. That's where all garden content is, all garden TV shows, magazines, they're all written for that. Don't do that here. We're different. Here we're trying to always lower the pH, always. Make it more acidic, and it won't stay there. You just try to get it there for a while. And so there we're adding sulfur. Sulfur makes things acidic, be right to you. So sulfur is real acidic, so we're trying to lower the pH. We know you're going to struggle with your pH. We know plants are going to yellow. That means the pH is kind of going up. And so you're going to struggle with that. We just put sulfur in our fertilizer. We put iron in the fertilizer because we know yellowing is an issue. So we're creating a recipe for here. And it's kind of different here. Phoenix, I'd say Palm Springs, Tucson, Durango, this whole area, this little Albuquerque, we're all just alkaline. The rest of the country is very, very acidic. Okay, so that's one thing to really watch. If your plants are yellowing right now, and someone brought in a sample of yellows, I've got yellow leaves. I'm fighting this myself. That's the reason I was fertilizing quite a bit. Last weekend I was fertilizing. This is off your grape, right? Grape leaf, probably on the inside toward the bottom areas, kind of sprinkled through. So aspens are doing this, apples are doing this, lilacs are doing this. What's happened is we fertilized in spring. So I'll tell you when to fertilize for holidays. Imagine that. When you fertilize, the fertilizer we put on at the spring, we've been watering so much, that's all gone now. So plants are now, the pH has gone up, the food is gone, now things are starting to yellow. So if we simply fertilize now again, if we fertilize now, it'll now reset that pH, and so it'll start to green up. Now these yellow leaves will probably fall off, but they'll set new ones, and the new ones will come out green. That's what you want. There you go. That's what you wanted to hear, huh? Now around the yard, some of my container gardens are a little harder to get to green up because the soil is just so confined. And it's easy to flush the nutrients out of that soil because there's so little of it. So a quick lesson on irons. Now we're going into gardening 501 almost. Let me take a sip here. So there you go. Chelated, C-H-E-L-T, chelated. Anyway, you look at the label. This is chelated iron. Anytime you hear the word chelated, that means instantly available to the plant, like right now. The plant can take it up immediately. It's in liquid form. This is chelated iron. This is kind of like ironite. Remember the old ironite that was out there? This is sort of like that, only it's iron sulfate. We know you're going to deal with pH issues and iron issues. What happens is the pH creeps up. If you had a hot tub or pool, you're always checking the pH. Your soil does the same thing as your hot tub. So if you get in there and the pH is too high or too low, you get out and it feels like your skin is crawling off. You got to go shower to kind of get to neutralize everything. Plant roots are the same way. The skin just crawls off of them. The pH gets off. You want to keep that down. The book says the perfect pH is 6.5. You'll never get there. pH always wants to go up to 7, 8. I've literally had a well in Chino Valley that went up to 9.4. I mean, basically you can clean your car with that. It's like so alkaline, you could sterilize your floors. Nothing would grow with that. And so we were always trying to inject. We always had acid injectors to kind of keep that acid, keep things more acidic. Here we put acid and soil iron in the same bucket as pelletized. So now you get something that'll lower the pH and green it up all at the same time. But the point being chelated, if it's really yellow right now, liquid form, this is instantly available. So we use a lot of this around the yard because we're keeping the plants green, because you don't want to buy a yellow plant. You want nice, rich green. The blossoms will stay brighter with iron. So yeah. Yeah, good question. So then, I didn't forget you. So I just misguided. So can we use both the food and iron? I'm doing that with my obviously yellowing plants. This is the core that's going to fertilize it over the long term. The iron supplement is for the short-term bump to make it green right now. So you'll see certain things like your maples can go quite yellow. In fact, they'll turn color. They'll turn their fall color a month early. Those are all indications that the pH went up way too fast, too high. And so you got to try to correct that. To use them in conjunction is perfect. Yeah. Coffee grounds. That's a common one. In fact, I wrote an article on that, available on our website. It's watersgardencenter.com. Take a moment. Look it up right now. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff you're told to do online. Anyway, coffee grounds. I did write that. It's on our website. You can take a look. I go in depth, whole article dedicated just to that. Coffee grounds are great. The problem is coffee grounds don't do anything. That help you? They're pretty, they look good, they change the pH a little bit, but there's no nutritional value. You took all the nutrition out and you boiled it out of it. And so anything good left is all gone. You drank it. But it can't hurt. But it's not going to, don't rely on it to do anything for you. Just add it to the compost pile, add it around your plants, and eventually it will, same thing with eggshells. I take eggshells, will it help, Mike? Yes, it helps your garden next year. Because eggshells, it's calcium. It's great calcium, but it breaks down super slow. It's going to be next year or the year after before it actually becomes available to the plant. So it's not a short-term fix. If you want short-term fix, this is far better. And it sort of looks like coffee grounds and all natural. So anyway, that's be a better choice. Yeah. So when to use these? So it is now. 4th of July is your cue. Summer feeding, usually the monsoon, you're taking advantage of the rains. We always get a wet cycle in the summer. We don't ever know how much, but we always get an increase in moisture, humidity, cloud cover. And it'll come. Right now, you can see that band. It's over at Albuquerque right now. As soon as that band coming up out of Mexico hits the White Mountains, that area, you know we're just a few days away. So it looks like we're 2-3 weeks away right now. Again, we're 3 weeks late this year. I don't know what it is. We're 3 weeks late. So you want to take advantage of the rain. So you're fertilizing everything in the yard right now. Plus, you've been watering like crazy through June. It's been hot and dry. You needed to water like crazy. That food you gave it in spring is all gone, so you need to supplement that. So you've got 4th of July. The most important feeding of the entire year, Halloween. Feed in October. That's the food the plants will use to form next year's flowers for fruit trees, for lilacs. If you want a lilac to bloom, you have to fertilize it in October, in the fall. If you want anything that fruits or flowers in the spring, fertilize then. Evergreens. You only get one shot at pine trees, spruce trees. It only grows once. The more you can give it, help it to form that button, that candle that grows up, the longer that is, the brighter the color. It's taking that food in the fall to do that with. So it's the most important feeding. Okay, and then we also fertilize in the spring. So Easter's kind of the holiday. I know Easter floats a lot. Just get it in spring. When you start to see things, when you get in the mood to go outside, fertilize. So you got, and then I think we should fertilize in the new year. So it's kind of weird, but you'll notice winter chlorosis is a pretty common thing here. And so you'll see your deodar cedars, the spruce trees, the evergreens will start to yellow on you. The red-tip photinias, they should be rich forest green through winter. If they start to yellow on you, that's winter chlorosis. If you can fertilize in midwinter, especially those evergreens, it will keep them looking rich and green. So it's a little bit different. So you're talking the new year, Easter, 4th of July, Halloween. And you'll have a handout here. If you put your name on that sign-up sheet, you'll have that handout to you by Monday, okay, in just a few days. You're awfully needy. You're one of those children, aren't you? You should be the front row. Get up here. No, what's going on?
When you fertilize in the winter, you can't really water that in.
Right.
Because you should be watering the fertilizer, right?
Oh, good question. So should you water your fertilizer after you fertilize? No, just get it on the ground. Don't worry about water. Don't worry about irrigation. Just get it on the ground. So you know how it snows here. It snows and it's gone like 3 days. We all pile into the grocery store. We raid everything. There's no toilet paper or bread or milk left because we think we're going to be hunkered down. We think we're in Minnesota or something. You know it's going to melt in 2 days. We're out and about hiking around the forest again. So just get it out there. The snow's going to come. It's going to melt. It's going to take it in. Don't worry about the rock. It's going to go through the rock. You got fabric underneath that. It goes right to the fabric. That's the beauty with irrigation or landscape fabric. Water and food can go through it, but weeds can't come up this way. That's the beauty of it. So just take it, don't try to work it too much. It's really hard for you hardcore gardeners. You like want to work it in, rototill it, just get it on there, you're fine. Oh, you're up on one of those ridge lines. Yeah. The other one that I'm doing right now, this is the time of year when tumbleweeds go from this to the size of VW beetles. This is when your freakish weeds grow fast. Your goat head, this is a real pretty ground cover. And you lift it up, it's got like 100 thorns underneath it. When your dogs walk on it, they're like, oh, help me, Mom, help me. This is, they grow now. If you know, and they grow with the monsoon rains. So I just put weed and grass stopper down on my entire yard, knowing that when the rains come, the weeds are going to grow freakishly fast. I'm putting this on as a preventative because there's two things in this world I hate most. I really despise watering anything. That's why man created irrigation clocks, so I never have to water again. It's just computers do that. I've got satellite feeds that tell it when to do it. I've got rain sensors. It's all tied in. It's all smart. And then I hate weeding. I hate weeding. Man and Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And what were they? They were required to weed from that point forward. I hate it. This keeps 99% of all your weeds at bay. You spread it like fertilizer. Water hits it and then goes in the soil, creates a barrier so that the seed can't, the taproot of that seed cannot get started. Okay, so with that, we're 1 hour in. I better go over. That's as far as I can go on. And I got so much more. You always over prepare. I've got more than I could possibly share in an hour, but I know you want to know about a couple of plants. I don't think I can go through all of them. I've done a couple. Let me just give you a couple ideas on what you can do. Okay, I'll start with this one for you Californians. So I have this in a pot, and I planted this at the base. This is oregano. We grow herbs better than anyone else in the country. Herbs love bright days, cool nights. They like dry. We don't get all the meltdown, the mildews, and the disease issues that a lot of parts of the country do. But I planted this at the base of the pot, mainly because this just looks good. I've got the purple with the gold. It's fantastic. Everyone comments on it. And they're both companion plants. And so they take the same water requirements, same sun, they do great. So just a design idea, and I get to mention herbs are a great way to go. So most herbs here are perennial. That is, they come back every year, except for basil. There's a couple that don't. They reseed frequently, but the sage, oregano, thyme, mints. We grow so many. Mints are a weed. Try to contain them. They just want to take over the whole yard. They do so well. So herbs. Okay, we got to cover hydrangea. Hydrangeas are probably the #1 talked about on the front of magazines. Lawns and hydrangeas. Many times they're together. Hydrangeas do not grow out in the sun here. They do not like our sun. If you put them in that 10 to 2 day, 10 to 3, they're going to vaporize and burn. If you put them in the shade, they love it. So the north side, underneath the canopies of trees, they'll take some morning sun, late day, because it's real low in the horizon. They won't take our midday sun. I don't care what the tag says or what your experience has been. Other parts of the country, here at this elevation, yeah, but Ken, I'm out in Dewey. I don't care where you live. If you're at this elevation, it's not going to like growing out in the sun. Give it some protection. Okay, shade. Also, too, they're real acidic. So they like the blue ones, the blue hydrangeas they're all the rage. It is so hard to keep a hydrangea blue here because our water, every time you water, it's alkaline water. So you're giving that plant 7.2 pH water every time you water, and you're watering it every 3 days. What's going to happen to your soil? It's naturally going to go right up to 7.2 or whatever that water is. So it's naturally going to want to go to pink. So sometimes, for me, I don't fight that. I just planted a pink hydrangea, and it stays that color, and it's just fine. It's easier and less frustrating for me as a gardener. I don't need more frustration in my life. Let's cover roses. I got a couple of them here. Again, we grow roses if you're kind of afraid of roses. You saw how much work your grandparents put into roses. You want to do that. You like to travel. I like cruise ships more than roses. There are varieties that are very, very low care. And so I brought two. This is a shrub rose. So roses really quick. Hybrid teas or long stems. That's Valentine's, Mother's Day. Long stem, that's here, Mom. That's a long stem. They grow really well here, but they're more maintenance because you got to deadhead them. You got Floribunda. That's the long stem with a cluster of flowers. Almost looks like a fireworks going off the end of that long stem. So it's not just one flower, it's several. That's Floribunda. Then you got climbing roses. Then you have shrub roses. Then you have carpet roses. These two prune themselves. When they're done flowering, this automatically resets and sets another flower by itself. Doesn't need help from you. That's pretty good. The flower's a little bit smaller, but there's more of them. And then it self-prunes itself. So could it help if you deadhead it every once in a while? Yeah, it might. It helps you feel better about yourself, helps the plant feel better, but it doesn't need that. It'll do it by itself. Okay, so that's a shrub rose. Many times I'll use them as a hedge. I grow them in containers just because they're so hardy. There are no special grafts, so if it ever resets down to ground level, if you've ever seen a rose do this, it comes back from that native rootstock, comes back like this wild thing that wants to rip your jugular vein out with huge thorns. This will reset, it's the same. It's on its own rootstock, okay? Carpet roses are the same, only they grow like this. Knee-high at most, and they spread. Beautiful in between rocks. Beautiful spilling over raised beds. Down a driveway. At the entrance. Roses maybe are too big. You want something lower. That's where you use carpet rose. Again, they self-prune. Easy care. Carpet roses. Full sun, yeah. I'd say at least 6 hours. For roses, they want at least 6 hours or more. More sun equals more flowers. But we don't get black spot here. I think in all my years, 2 times I've seen black spot. There's a little bit of mildew. We'll have some thrip and aphids early on, but we don't have June beetles or what are the beetles you get in the Midwest that eat everything? We don't get those. So we don't have all the issues that other parts of the country do. So roses do exceptionally well here. Easier than you think. They're not as much care as you might have believed. And nothing blooms like them. Crepe myrtle right here. I got to cover this for you southern folks. We don't grow crepe myrtle trees. And here's the reason why. We grow bushes, not trees. So a lot of you that south, they just have these beautiful, like 15-foot trees. They're just stunning right now. Here what happens is we get a super crazy cold about every 10, 12 years that resets them all to the ground. So they don't die. It just kills off the top and they come back fresh from the roots. So you see these beautiful bushes because they get reset every few years. But you'll have a tree, you're going, I proved Ken wrong. I'm growing a crepe myrtle tree. And then in 2 years, we'll get this crazy cold that kills it back to the ground. Same with palms. Don't really grow. There's always rumors of palm trees here. But we're not in Phoenix. This is pretty cold. So they get reset. Yeah, you can grow them for a year or two, and then nature tells you, you're not doing that. We are a zone 7. That is our zone. Don't be buffaloed into thinking we aren't. So you folks at the higher elevations, Groom Creek, Highland Pines, the ridgelines, you are a zone 6. So zone 7 means we need plants that can go down to about 10 degrees. Okay, so when you're looking at the tag, it'll say, oh, this is for a zone 6. Well, if you're a zone 7, you can grow zone 6, 7. No, you can grow zone 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That or lower. Okay, does that make sense? Let me say that one more time, just in case I blurted that out wrong. So we are a zone 7. We need plants to go down to 10 degrees. But you can also grow plants like lilac. That's a zone 4, 3 or 4. it goes down to minus 40 degrees. But we grow really nice lilac. So we can grow zone 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We can't grow zone 10. That's Phoenix. Phoenix plants, I think they can't have plants that go down below 40 degrees. Some crazy cold. They can't see cold. If you think cold, they're going to die. So those plants, if you're from Phoenix, please just erase the hard drive, reboot, start over, because all that garden content, it does not migrate up to here. It's different. So it's kind of different cycles, okay? All right, so crepe myrtles. We do crepe myrtles. This is the time for them. The other ones with those often, this one real quick. This is the only 2 hibiscus that we grow. So this is a Rose of Sharon is a common name, but it's a true hibiscus. Has a hibiscus type of flower. We grow quite a few colors here. Gets up pretty big, and then it just comes back every year. It's deciduous. That is, it will lose its leaves in the winter, but it's got hundreds and hundreds of flowers. This is a Mashudos hibiscus, or Confederate rose, another common name. This one gets the big flowers, like traditional hibiscus flowers you're used to. Great, it's as big as your hand, but it's a true perennial. It will reset back to ground level every year. You'll whack it right off, and then it regrows to about hip high with these huge flowers to it. Those are the only 2 hibiscus we grow. We've got some others that are annuals. It's the Phoenix varieties. They're going to be beautiful, but unless you bring them indoors or have a greenhouse, that's just cheating. If you have a greenhouse, maybe that you can get them to winter over. Otherwise, the rest, us common people, it's going to die out in the winter. Okay, these are the 2 you want to go with. That's for the hibiscus, folks. There's one that's blooming right now. You're seeing all around town. Mine's in bloom. Comes in 2 colors. This is called smoke bush. I wish it was in bloom, but you're seeing a shrub about this big, and on top of it, the flower looks like it's smoking. It's a real light, airy, wispy kind of flower to it. Comes in purple, comes in this gold. This is the most popular, but I think this doesn't show up sometimes. If you've got a real dark, like siding, dark rock, if it's real dark, you put a dark thing, it almost just disappears. And so sometimes you put the gold in, and it's a better contrasting. So you get the same exact plant, blonde or brunette. Just pick. They're the same. The flowers will be different. This will have a lighter colored flower. This has a dark purple flower to it. But this is a deciduous shrub. They call it smoke bush or smoke tree sometimes. It really grows more like a bush, multi-stem typically, but super drought hardy, super tough. You'll see a lot of these planted here. Okay. I brought this one just to give, so I use this one a lot. Junipers are not your enemy. You folks with allergies, it's hopeless. You're surrounded by juniper forest. You're going to have allergies. But you should still plant some junipers. Now, here's the thing with junipers. There are males and there are females. It's only the men that are the problem. Okay? They're the ones that throw all the pollen. And when he goes off in spring, literally they look like they're exploding. They literally just like they're on fire. And he wants to populate every gal on the hillside. I mean, it's just that pollen is everywhere. It's ridiculous. The females don't put pollen on. They put the berries. So now as you're walking through the forest, you can, oh, that's a female. That's my allergy problems right there. So here at Waters Garden Center, because we're your friends, yes, shop at Waters Garden Center. There, we only sell female varieties. So we're trying to get out of that. We don't have the pollen-ridden ones. We're doing it by graft, so we know what species, we know boys and girls. So that's the only ones you'll find here. So this is not going to have a bunch of pollen. That's going to be a problem, but it's super tough. This junipers grow native here. They like everything about here. I think we need to plant more of them. So we've got alligator junipers over here, which are the wild ones. We also got Spartans, and we've got all kinds. spreading ground cover varieties. That's what this one is. I use this one from down below around the pond because ponds are really dark, like mysterious, if they're not green. So they're kind of like this, have this deep illusion to them. And they need some lighter things around the edges to kind of make them pop. And my backyard's very dark. So we've got dark ground cover. So I wanted lighter colored plants. So this from the deck, which is a story and a half up, you can look down going, my domain, this is beautiful. Birds are flying around. And the gold just really makes from a design element, gold is really a pretty color. Now, if you've got crushed granite all around your yard, maybe this is not the best choice. You got a whole bunch of gold rock already. Maybe you want more of the blues. So carpet, there's blue carpet, there's Calgary carpet, there's a whole bunch of greens and blues that you can use. So, and then I brought this one. This is probably my favorite screening plant. Red tip Botini is the #1 seller. That's one where the new growth is red. And I sell hundreds, thousands. I don't know how many I sell. This one I will try to convert you to this. This is red clusterberry cotoneaster, or cottoneaster is how you spell it. This plant grows fast, gets up easily, 8-10 feet tall by wide, loves to be trimmed on. If you put this in front of a propane tank, it will disappear in 1 year. If you put this in front of a garden shed, your neighbor's junk pile, that new class ARV that they're so proud of, but you hate looking at in your back patio, it disappears in a year. It just disappears. So private hot tubs, this is the one. It gets a white flower in spring, and then it has red berries. That's the name, red cluster berries, clusters of berries to the fall. But anyway, it doesn't get enough play because it's such an unusual plant. It really only grows really well here. The rest of the country, not as much. Red clusterberry cottoneaster is how you'd spell it. That's the reason I brought that one. What's that? Cottoneaster is how you spell it, or cotoneasters is how the common name is. Full sun, yeah. Yeah, I would say at least it's pretty flexible, but if it gets in too much shade, it'll tend to lean. It wants to go to the sun. So it grows so fast, it'll just lean that way. What else do I have real quick? You're seeing one that's growing right now. This is just starting to bloom. This is a potentia, or for you folks in the Midwest, potentella, double L's. Okay, so it gets about knee-high, kind of ball-shaped. Deer don't eat it. Rabbits don't eat it. Loves the sun. It's a good little plant for here. So where you need a short thing that's nice and full that blooms a long time, this is it. So you'll see this a lot in your neighborhood. This is potentia. Comes in yellow, #1 seller. Kind of a pinky and then a white apple blossom. Comes in a couple different colors. So what else? Now, I'll end with this. Yeah, right on time. This is my new favorite perennial. So I plant a lot of perennials. This is called rainbow ascot euphorbia. So euphorbia is the same family as poinsettias. Poinsettias that's a euphorbia. So when you pinch the branch off, it has that same white sap, kind of milk that comes out. That's a defensive mechanism that euphorbia put into their system to keep animals from eating them. It tastes nasty. So your rabbits and deer and antelope, and they're not going to eat this. Okay, so bulletproof. The main thing, javelina. Yeah, they might pick it up and toss it back to each other, back and forth in the backyard, but they're not going to eat it. They might just move it for fun. So, but this one I like because it gets up about this tall, vase-shaped like this, and it's evergreen. It looks like this in the winter. It looks like this in the summer. It looks like this in the fall. It looks like this. The flower that it puts on is kind of like a Dr. Seuss flower. The flower looks exactly like this, only disc-shaped. It's kind of pretty, very unusual. I like it mainly, I use it in containers out there in the yard. I kind of use it everywhere. Where I really find this is a striking plant. So we've got a 2-story house. We like to entertain. We got the classic, down beside the garage, there's steps to the backyard, through the gate to the backyard. Well, I've got some lighting there. But guests always want to leave when you're not looking, when the party's kind of over and they're tired, and you just want one more glass of wine or whatever, just to keep the thing going. They're sneaking out the back door. Well, I don't want them tripping and falling while they're heading to the car. And so I plant these right next to the stairs, every other stair, because they're brightly colored. Even in any amount of light, they glow almost at night. So it helps. I'm using them as a guidepost or as markers, just help people kind of make sure they leave safely from our backyards. It's a good one. So rainbow ascot euphorbia, evergreen perennial. Now mine did take it in the chin a little bit in March. We had those really heavy snows. We had some substantial snows. Just lighted up because they're evergreen, and it just beat them up. I just whacked them off, fertilized them with the all-purpose food. Now they look fabulous. So sometimes plants need to be reset anyway, and this one resets really well. A cousin to this, the most famous one locally, is called gopher plant or gopher spurge. That's also a euphorbia. It's got blue color to it, spreads around. You'll see that quite often. And the rumor is gopher plant one in your yard, it keeps gophers away. Not even remotely true. So, but they won't eat that one plant, that's for sure. But I've had them burrow up right next to it. So, but the rumor is, that's the internet. Gotta love it. But they won't eat the roots. So anyway, with that, I will hang as long as you want. Come up, take a look, take pictures. I'll just answer questions. I'm not going anywhere. And then next week, the class is bugs and animals. And so I got one of my foremost experts here. He's going to teach that one. Kevin's been with me a lot of years. He's going over the bug one. We'll try to bring some examples of spider mites. They're bad right now. Aphids, they're bad right now. Bark beetle. If I could bring a trunk of bark in with me, we would do that. But we'll explain what that is. So it's on, if your things are turning yellow, you can see some bugs, we'll go over how to deal with that. Anyway, with that, I'll let you clap just because that makes me feel better. Now hang as long as you want.